So it's Sunday. We are hoping that everybody is having a good day. So let us know in the chat if we can start today's event. Oh, that's nice, Anita. If it's sunny there. Let me present it. So before we start with today's event, let us know more about Women Who Code as an organization. So Women Who Code's main vision is to inspire and empower other women to excel in their technology careers. And our main vision is to have a diversity where women are represented as engineers and leaders in technology. We have all over more than 29,000 members worldwide from different technologies of our community. And they are across different countries, which is 134 countries. And we are growing daily with our community. And because Women Who Code is an inclusive community, we also follow code of conduct, and we do not tolerate any kind of incidents against our community with our online events and workshops. And if there are anything reported, you can always report at womenwhocode.com/code of conduct, and that is all about Women Who Code. So let's go ahead with the speaker's introduction. So today we have with us Carolyn Van Slyck, who works with Microsoft as a software engineer, principal software engineer, and we are glad to have her here today. And thank you for sharing your knowledge with us today in our event, Carolyn. And I would leave it for you to move ahead.
Thanks for having me here. This is great. I've always loved what Women Who Code does. I think it's an amazing mission, and I love to see how successful that you all have been. So I'm really excited to be here today.
So let's start with our first question for the day. So because you have been into contributing and maintaining open source, so we would like to know about yourself and your involvement in different projects, Caroline.
Yeah. So I'm Carolyn Van Slyck. I work at Microsoft, and I'm a senior, I'm a principal engineer. Sorry, I never use my title. And I don't actually work on Microsoft things. They pay me full time to work on upstream open source projects. By upstream, I mean that they're not like Microsoft's own open source projects. Like a lot of .NET, for example, is all kind of owned and controlled by Microsoft, and it happens to be open source. Upstream means more that these are projects owned by nonprofit corporations like Apache or Cloud Native Compute Foundation, and I contribute to those. I first got into open source actually by making a theme for my blog and then sharing it with everyone. Like, it wasn't technical at all, actually. It was just making pictures and changing the colors and stuff like that. And I didn't even know it was open source at the time. But I loved it so much. I've been becoming more involved since. I've been in a whole bunch of open source projects over the years. Currently, I'm a maintainer for Porter, which is an open source project that helps you make installers for kind of complicated cloud native applications. So where you have like infrastructure, maybe you need to make containers or VMs or functions as a service, all sorts of stuff. And then pairing that with your code, it kind of helps you make an installer. So you can give people your stuff and they can run it with a single command. I'm also a tech lead for the CNCF, that's again Cloud Native Compute Foundation, in the Contributor Strategy group. And what we do is we help projects welcome new contributors, help them mentor and grow how many people are contributing to their projects, and make sure that they have a really positive, successful time. We're concerned with creating diverse, inclusive communities and supporting maintainers to do this in a way that's sustainable, right? So that no one burns out. And I also run Women Who Go, that's G-O, not code. And it's kind of very similar to Women Who Code, but on a much smaller scale, and it's specific to the Go programming language.
Oh, that's good. So is there anything that you would like to share about your stories, like initial stories that made you get into tech?
Yeah. So actually, I didn't think I was going to do tech at all. I was convinced from a very young age that I would be a veterinarian because I love animals. And then I worked at a veterinarian clinic and I realized it wasn't for me at all. I am allergic to cats, so I should have known from the start that was a bad idea. And then in high school, I got a graphing calculator and I learned that you can write programs on it. So I wrote programs that would solve my math homework and things like that. And I also made like a choose your own adventure game where no matter what you pick, the dragon would eat you. I'm not good at games, but I was excited about it and I thought it was super fun. And so my math teacher was like, you should take a computer programming class. And I was really lucky and there was a brand new one at my high school. And so I was able to do that and realize that I love figuring things out. I like having something where I don't know. I didn't know where to start. I didn't really know what we're trying to do. And I love just like digging through it and being like, this is what's wrong. This is what we want to do. Just like making things like that is super interesting to me. So my first software job, I worked at it's called a video test company. So if you have like a brand new computer monitor, they would hook this hardware up to it and it would show displays on the screen and it would make sure the monitor was good. Like there weren't broken pixels, for example. And I wrote just a little bit of software that would put an encryption key on each one of those. And I don't think I ever could have gotten that job today, 20 years later. I got it because my mom was a career counselor at high school, and she had contacts all around the local community and knew lots of businesses who were looking for interns and things like that, right? And so she helped me connect with them and go, hey, they're looking for someone. And that's how I knew to even apply for the job. It really relied on like my network and my parents' network. And I realized that is not possible for the majority of people. I say this because it gave me a huge boost into the community and into writing software that not many people get. Because entry-level jobs are really hard to find nowadays, I think. A lot of companies aren't interested in training. And I was not good at coding when they hired me. I had my computer science class in high school. I knew how to like do a for loop and some math. I had no idea how to like make the computer do actual things. And if they hadn't taken a chance on me, it would have been a lot harder. So this is what's neat about open source though, is that you don't need to know people to get in. You don't need to have some connection. You can contribute no matter where you are, no matter what country you're in, what language you speak. And, you know, no matter rich or poor you are, if you have access to the computer and you can, you know, write some code. I know people who write code by hand on paper and then get it all ready. And when they have access to a computer, they go in and they type it all in and they send it out. Like, people are super creative about getting into this. And I'm just in awe of how much work people put into it. But what's great about it is you can get in. And there's a lot of communities out there who will give you that first chance. So I just want to share my story because I realize it's coming from a very big place of privilege. But I wanted to kind of contrast this with, that's why we like open source, is that it is a way to get in and get that experience and give you some networking that will help with finding those jobs.
And I agree that finding entry-level jobs are difficult nowadays. It's just that we need to network with different people, learn their experiences, and move forward. But even I've been doing.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it helps a lot. So usually we have different kinds of projects. As you said, you're already part of CNCF as a lead. And would you be sharing us about like how do you manage with different projects?
Do you mean how do I manage me being on so many projects at once?
Yes.
Yeah. It didn't happen overnight. I hate to admit it, I've been in the industry for 20 years, and over time, you start making commitments in different places, right? So one, I am paid to work on open source. And that's what enables me to work on a whole bunch of things. Like Microsoft pays me to work on Women Who Go, for example. I can do that during my day. They pay me to be a lead for that CNCF project, Contributor Strategy, and they pay me to work on Porter. So for the most part, I don't have to put in my free time. But when I started, I did. When I started working on projects and before 2018, when I started at Microsoft, I did everything nights and weekends. And I never would be doing as much as I do now if I wasn't supported by a company. To give you an idea of what's more of a reasonable thing to do, if you're doing this on your own free time, like for example, I wouldn't choose to be a maintainer for a project if I was doing it for free whenever I had time after taking care of myself and my family and any commitments I had in my life. One thing that's really easy to fall into with volunteering in general, okay, because that's what open source is. It's volunteering. It doesn't really matter that it's tech or not. The aspect of this is that you need to set boundaries and understand before you make commitments and you engage with people, understand how much time you have and accept that the amount of time you have today and the amount of emotional energy you have to give will change over time. It will grow, and sometimes you have a whole bunch to give. And sometimes you really need to take care of yourself, right? And you may become ill, you may be taking care of family, whatever it could be a pandemic, lots of things, right? Understand that it's difficult when you make a commitment like running Women Who Code, for example, or running an open source project. That's hard to put down when you need to take care of yourself and your life. So if you're not being paid, if you're not having someone support you doing this in a way that's healthy and sustainable for you, I recommend being a contributor where when you have time, you show up, right? You do something that's valuable to you, that fills you up and makes you glad that you did open source. It doesn't take too much away from you. And then when you don't have time, maybe for 6 months, you're terribly busy doing something else. No one is expecting you to give them free labor, right? So that would be my recommendation for how to juggle this. It's really cool to get paid for open source, and I would have lots of advice for how to get into that. But most people start the other way as a volunteer, and you want to make sure it's sustainable and healthy for you.
Makes sense. So are there any other ways in open source that you get involved with, like apart from coding?
A ton. Yeah. I would say that almost the majority of time that I spend contributing to open source is through non-coding things, actually. There's all sorts of things that an organization, which is what an open source project is, it's usually an organization that is trying to solve a problem and then get the solution out to a whole bunch of people around the world. So a website, right? Graphic design, making images, graph charts, architectural diagrams, adorable pictures that'll convince people that your project is friendly and wonderful. Technical writing, creating conceptual documents that explain what is the problem you're trying to solve, who would have this problem, and how do you specifically solve various tasks that most people are trying to deal with. Tutorials, blog posts, all this stuff is honestly like the foundation of being able to share the problem you've solved. If you just write the code, like there's a cheesy movie where they say, if you build it, they will come. That's not true for software at all. You have to share with people that you have a solution to a problem that they have. And you do that through all of these other non-code things. You need to find people where they are and bring content to them. Make blog posts, videos. And then just when it comes to running the project, say you finally have people who want to use the solution that you've come up with. There's a ton of feature requests, bugs, issues. People are asking questions constantly from all different areas. Someone who's able to step up and help answer questions can be extremely valuable to a project, even though they themselves may not have come up with any of the answers. When I first started helping with one of the open source projects I was on, Dep, was a dependency manager for Go, that what I did is I watched the maintainer and I listened whenever he answered a question and I tried to understand it, okay? And then when I saw someone ask something similar, I literally copied and pasted and I said, the maintainer has answered this before and this is what Sam said, okay? And I turned that into an FAQ, a frequently asked question page and things like that. It didn't rely on my own knowledge, but I basically helped scale that maintainer out and reduce the burden on them. And doing something like that is how I got to become a maintainer on that project. I learned so much from just trying to understand everything this maintainer shared with the community, and then made sure that everyone else had that information accessible to them. And you can just do so much. I think the biggest part of being on any project is oftentimes there's one or two couple maintainers who are trying to do everything. They're trying to like hold up this entire project and keep it running and like bring more people to it. And it's way more than 1, 2, or 3 people can do. So anytime you can step up and identify a task that helps them, that removes a burden from them and enables them to focus on why they wanted to be a maintainer in the first place, which was most likely writing code, it's extremely valuable, and all projects would welcome this type of contribution.
That is so cool. I hadn't really thought about that the maintainers are stretched thin, because I always thought the maintainers want to do everything themselves, but no.
I mean, I think that's a good question to think about. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say that there's different types of open source projects out there. So some is a person on the weekend wrote a really neat tool that solved a problem that they themselves were interested in, right? And they didn't sign up to run an organization. They didn't sign up to help thousands of people. And for those projects, those aren't the best to contribute to be honest, because it may just be their own pet project. And they may not want help because they don't want to sign up for a commitment that they didn't ask for. What you want to look for is projects that are looking for people. They do want to build a community, right? And those maintainers are stretched very thin because they're trying to do something really big, and they would absolutely welcome your help.
Very cool. Oh, so Sunita asked in the Q&A, how did you get involved with the CNCF? What was that journey like?
Yeah, well, first I was involved with the Kubernetes community. And I met someone named Paris Pittman, and she's wonderful. And she leads one of the groups, Contributor Experience. And that's how I met her, is because I wanted to become a contributor. I was new, right? I wasn't an established cool person at all. And so I showed up to this Contributor Experience group wanting to figure out how I could fit in. And the entire purpose of this group was to make a path for people to become a part of the community, to be able to contribute. They would help you find ways to fit in and do things. And it was amazing. And she's my role model. I absolutely pay attention to how she does everything and try to model it myself, or to like mimic what she does. So she started, amongst with other people, the Contributor Strategy group in the CNCF. The CNCF is the parent group for Kubernetes. And when she started it, she said, Carolyn, you seem to have a lot of opinions about this. Would you be interested in joining? And I was like, yes, but only as a contributor. You know, I don't want to make commitments. And here I am a couple years later leading it. She sucked me in, you know what I mean? So that's how I got involved with that. Usually the path is rarely, I want to be involved with this, and somehow you just jump right to leading the project or being that maintainer or something. It always starts with making connections with people, okay? Building trust, demonstrating that you're going to show up, have a good attitude, right? And help them in some way. And over time, that's what opens up these other opportunities to move into, you know, whatever direction you wanted to go, essentially. If you wanted to become a project manager for these things, you wanted to run the release team, or, you know, be a project lead or a maintainer, the way you do that is building trust and solid relationships with these people, and then being there when opportunities open up.
So, can you please suggest us any repositories for beginners? I mean, who are interested to get into development and open source?
Yeah, let me find the link real quick and I will post it in chat. This website was made in part by Scott Hanselman, who is an amazing part of the community for the .NET community. Here we go. It's called firsttimersonly.com. What I like about it is it gives you links to lots of individual sites that help you find places to get started in open source, right? It's not the definitive place, it's an aggregation of places. So for example, it will link you to Good First Issues, which is a website that searches GitHub for issues that have been flagged with, this is good for someone who's new to the project. And it helps you find projects who are looking for help. And they have advice and a whole bunch of different other sites that I think are super useful to someone starting out. But before jumping into something like that, before like going, I want to find a project that needs help, I think it's important as a beginner to ask yourself why it is that you want to be in open source. I'm not questioning that you should be, but I'm saying you should understand why you're doing it and what you want to get out of it, right? Because that'll alter where you decide to go, like what projects you're trying to get into. For example, if you want to get into a specific company, okay, like some companies have open source projects out there, right? And they're run by the company and they put it out there and they accept contributions. If you wanted to work at that company, then that would be a great place to go contribute and to go look for places where you can help and learn. And like I was saying, the ultimate, I think, reward of doing open source is connecting with these people, because what better way to demonstrate that you could do the job? It's really useful. Other people get into open source because they want to learn a specific technology. Maybe you don't have your first tech job yet. Maybe you're doing something else and you're trying to transition laterally into it, right? You may have picked, I want to learn Python, okay? Then that's what you should be looking at, is not just any project that will take you, but look for Python projects. And specifically, look for projects that provide support. As I was kind of like alluding to before, some open source projects, it's just a single person and they're doing their best. And like, that's great, right? But they don't have time to help you, maybe. They're not going to be able to teach you. And you won't really be able to lean on them because they weren't offering that level of support and commitment. But some projects and some like communities are. I once contributed, just talking about Python for a second, was to Project Jupyter, which is those scientific notebooks where you can write code and immediately see the results, and it's super neat. I met a wonderful person there, Carol Willing, and she helped introduce me to more people and be that person who I could direct message and be like, I feel really out of it, I don't know how to get started, or I'm uncomfortable and I don't know how to ask this question. She was like an amazing point of contact to kind of help me step in and contribute. Or like I mentioned, Kubernetes has an entire group dedicated to helping people who want to contribute and aren't sure where to start, right? Or supporting them when they have an awkward interaction and they're not quite sure what to do, you know? Those are where I would look for first before just looking at like that website and going, who needs help, right? Because a lot of people could put a label on an issue in GitHub, but that doesn't mean that they're the best fit for you and will help you achieve your goals.
That's great. So because you are in IT for many years now and into open source, into tech, in leadership, so are there any tips that you can suggest us, or I mean, do you have any kind of experiences which you have dealt with other people in your projects, like were they positive, or do you have any negative stories to share with, like in your experience?
Sure. I mean, there are positive interactions out there. I don't recommend doing it if you're not finding it to be rewarding for you, okay? And feeling confused and anxious and not sure what's going on or attacked on the internet is not rewarding, right? So that's happening. There are other places you could be that would work better for you. So I just want to focus on the positive stuff. Like one, just recognize that you need to be doing this for you and taking care of yourself, right? And so if it's not working, pick a different one. But when you find a good one, you can have some really wonderful positive experiences. You know, I mentioned working with Carol Willing, which was amazing. You know, we don't work at the same company, and yet I still know her and can reach out to her. And I think that's one of my favorite things about open source. It has strengthened my career path and my support networks moving through it, right? As someone who's underrepresented in tech, you need that. I've done it myself, and you don't progress quickly, and you never achieve as much as you could have if you had used that support network that's out there. And what's great about it is that when I move to another company, I'm still friends with Carol, and she'll still help me. Or Paris, I can still ask her questions and things like that. So being an open source is more than just like helping other people, because you are helping yourself. You're making these connections with people and you are helping them, right? It's not all one way. You're helping them and eventually they can help you. I found a couple jobs through people like this because I had known them and they said, hey, I know about this. You know, it wasn't posted on Indeed or I wasn't looking, right? But you become aware of things and people want to work with you because they've had positive experiences working with you in the past and they think you're cool. They think you're great, and you are great and awesome. You're showing up already, right? We know you have the right attitude. And when you go out in open source, you put it on public record that you're amazing and you're willing to do things in the open and you have nothing to hide as far as like being great to work with, right? It speaks for itself often.
Great. So do you have any tips for, the ones who are getting started with contribution and maintenance of open source?
Yeah. Let me think. I brought down a couple notes to kind of help out here. I think, one is find that support community, but then the next would be to understand how you can learn and grow and help people without being kind of awkward. Because it is really awkward. Like, you're talking to strangers on the internet, and it's not always clear, especially across cultures, what's okay to ask. For example, let's say that I'm working on a new project, and I'm also learning Git at the same time. Oh, and I'm also learning Go at the same time. Oh, and I've never used their project before. Like, that happens. So many of my new contributors, they're like learning the world at once. They're learning everything. So what really helps to set expectations is, who can you ask for help? Okay. So if you're talking to the maintainer, they can help you with questions about their project specifically. Obviously, you use the resources they've already put out there. If they've written documentation, please read it before asking questions, right? Use their project and try to figure out what it's supposed to be, what problem is it solving, and how do you use it before jumping in and be like, I'm going to help contribute. The first thing you do before you contribute is learn the project a little bit. Not an expert, but like, you should have run it, right? A lot of people don't bother doing that. So it already stands out as, it puts you ahead, right? Now, let's say you have questions about Go. Do you ask the maintainer? That's a pretty big burden to put on them, because they're just one person and they may be working with 10 new contributors. They can't be teaching Go to 10 people, right? But there are other support networks out there. There are things like, for example, for Go, there's Go Bridge, there's Women Who Go. For Python, there's PyLadies, right? There's all sorts of different communities that have put themselves out there and said, we want to help you with this language, for example. And those is the best people to ask those types of questions, right? Or same thing, kind of learning Git. What you're going to end up doing is find a network of resources that you can kind of lean on for the appropriate questions, I think, and that'll really help you get started.
Great. I think for somebody like me who's not into development and open source, and I've been into support and operations roles, this has been very informative. Thank you, Carolyn.
Happy to help.
I will try to explore myself and reach out to you as well once we are done with this event today. I think everybody needs to explore this kind of area as well.
Great. Thank you for having me. Were there any other questions? I saw someone just raise their hand.
We have 3 attendees today, and anybody of you, if you have any questions, you can raise them in chat or in the Q&A session feature.
No, it looks like Tara just clicked it by accident, so that's fine. I was just making sure if people had questions, they can ask them. One thing I wanted to just put out as another resource is I started writing a series of blog posts about exactly this, what we're talking about today. Why would you want to be in open source? How do you start, right? How do you deal with conflict and, people, right? And then maybe how to move forward in open source. How do you get a job doing it? Things like that. So maybe in the show notes or something, we could link to that. But let me put a link here. I'm not trying to pump up my blog. I apologize if that's what it's like. But I think blog. Thank you. But there's more here than I can say. And I think this may be useful over time to people.
Mm-hmm.
I actually have a question. So you mentioned the whole, being at Microsoft, getting paid to do open source is a different story. I'm curious how you ended up how did you end up, being able to work at Microsoft, having the support from leadership there to be a full-time open source maintainer?
Yeah, it was a very deliberate thing. Okay, do we have time for a little story? Hopefully. um, I had been working at a company doing, I was working at Rackspace doing stuff, and I wasn't quite happy with it. And I kind of decided I really want to get into open source and get paid to do it and really do it well. Because up to this point, I had been doing it in my free time and, having trouble with commitments and boundaries because it was like a job. I felt responsible, but I wasn't getting paid. And so I was eating pancakes one morning in 2017, and I saw that there was this new open source project, DEP, the Go Dependency Manager, and they were looking for help. They had explicitly said, we're trying to get more people. And I thought to myself, I've saved up money to kind of switch jobs and spend time looking. And I'm like, what if what I did was I quit my job and I worked on this project, right? And I built my way up so that people knew I was associated with the project. I was like using it very explicitly as a portfolio piece, and then to make connections with people. It was kind of a very special opportunity because it was it was going to be a commonly used tool for a lot of people who wrote Go. It was going to be very visible, and they were new enough that I saw the opportunity that if I stepped in, there was a path to becoming one of the people associated with the project, if that makes sense. And I was going to use that. I was super like, it sounds dirty and awful, but I was using that to move my career forward. Okay. It wasn't just like out of the kindness of my heart. I thought like I could help them and this would help my career. So I took a couple months off, and as I worked on the project full time, making myself helpful, I also was interviewing at a bunch of places, and I was very explicit. I wanted to work on upstream open source, right? And I got rejected so many times. Just, you have no idea. It was brutal. It made me feel terrible about myself. I doubted all of my technical skills. I had to go back to my family and support network after every rejection because I was often told, you are not technical enough. Maybe you should be in marketing, and other things that I know we all sometimes hear, and it's all garbage, right? So I just kind of continually push that aside, say, no, I can do this. And eventually I interviewed at Microsoft a couple months later, and they knew my name. They didn't know me, but they knew my name because of my work on DEP, on that open source project. And they were willing to overlook that I'm terribly nervous and probably sweated too much during the interview and all sorts of things. And they gave me a chance, right? And I got that chance because of the work I'd done in open source. Okay, now I had a really amazing opportunity because I had enough money to take a couple months off and just do it, but it could have been something I did nights and weekends and it still would have paid off, right? Associating myself to a project that people were paying attention to the names of who was contributing and building that network is what helped me get that job. And you could have done it either way. I went all in, right? And that's how I got this job, right? And then I made sure once I had it to continue to build and strengthen my network with all these people. And I know networking is like a very dirty word. I get it, and you feel weird doing it. But the idea is the way I network with people is I identify how I can help them, right? Sometimes your help is being supportive and going, yes, you did it. Good job. I'm going to retweet what you said. I'm going to, comment on your blog post. I'm going to help give you a code review, or I'm going to be there for you when you're like, I'm sad. I need cat pictures or whatever. And people tweet and send them a bunch of cat pictures. Whatever it was, right? I was just being helpful. I was just pointing out there that I'm here to help. And then people, for the most part, will reciprocate, right? They have to be good people, be wise where you give your time, right? But that's how I made it happen, really.
For networking, I think we need to have a common area of interest so that we can start the conversation and keep it going.
Yes, absolutely. it's not just random. Like sometimes networking in person at an event, like maybe you show up to a conference or a meetup and you're just like cold, trying to be like, hello, let's immediately network in the first 30 seconds, is the weirdest thing ever. I find online it's almost easier because just like you said, there's something that is already connecting you, that common interest. We're both interested in, you know, the pandas Python library or something like that. We're both really keen on Kubernetes. Like that's way more of a natural, less forced feel to networking.
Okay, I kind of have another meta question as well, because for context, Women Who Code is also trying to build a community. We're built on top of volunteers. I have some open source projects that I guess I inherited at work, but it's always so hard to get, you know, volunteers and get, you know, people to be a part of the community. So what advice do you have for communities that are trying to build up and engage with their members?
Yeah. So first, I would totally recommend reading some of the things we've put out on, I'll put it in here. It's contribute.cncf.io. Because I misspelled it. I can't spell contribute. Okay, well, let's give this one more try. Okay. A lot of the work that my group has done as part of CNCF Contributor Strategy is applicable to any project. It's not specific to, you know, cloud or anything like that. I think you may find some really helpful things in there. In general, understand why people would contribute in the first place and make sure you're meeting those needs, right? And also make sure that you're putting out the call for help where those people are going to be, right? They're not already in your issue backlog, right? But they may be showing up to Women Who Code or to Write Speak Code, which is another amazing group to help get people in open source. They're oftentimes in a group of people where we're friendly and opening and welcome to people who are looking for places to volunteer and give. Go to those places and put out a call and say the things that will make them recognize that you're going to help them achieve their goals, okay? So one wrong way to do it that I've seen people do is like they'll show up to our Slack, which is, you know, for women and gender minorities, for example, who are interested in coding, and they'll be like, we need more girls. How do we get more girls? Why don't you just come and contribute or whatever? No. Obviously you would never do that. But if you go out and you say, we're looking to mentor and teach people how to be comfortable working in open source, here are the things we can help with, right? Throw excessive emoji everywhere. Try to really help people see that you are interested in helping them. You're willing to teach. That's like the biggest thing. Wherever I go and I say I'm willing to teach, I can help mentor people. You can join even if you don't know Go, even if you don't know this, and we'll help get you started. That's how I've probably gotten 80% of my contributors. And also, some people got into it because they want to eventually become maintainers, right? They have goals of their own, or they want to try to get a job, things like that. If you're able to say, our project wants to help you move from being a new contributor to a maintainer, and we even have a web page that says, do this, do this, do this, and you move to this level in the project. And if you do this, you can move to this level. Being really clear with expectations so no one's guessing, right? Like you wrote it down, you really mean it, and you'll kind of like live up to whatever you said, helps build trust and makes people realize that if they volunteered their time with you, you would treat them well. I will say one thing though, it's a pandemic. No one can find contributors right now. Everyone is taking care of themselves as they should. So I would be really gentle on yourself if you're having trouble finding people, because everyone is.
All right, that's awesome. And yeah, that's like people are giving away their free time, they're giving away their labor, and
Yeah.
it's worth it to make sure that as a community you have something to offer.
Yep, definitely.
All right, Maitreyi, I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah, so if anybody has more questions to ask, you can have them in chat or the Q&A feature. It's always good to have something like a good topic to have conversation with, because we didn't realize our time today. It's been almost 1 hour and we just didn't realize our time.
Sorry. I feel like maybe I talked too much, but hopefully it was helpful.
That's okay. That was in a positive way. Yes. It's been good till now. And any other questions from Mary, Sunita, or Tara?
I do want to say that maybe someone's watching this video later. If you do have questions and you want to reach out, you can always at me on Twitter. Or if you find me on a Slack, I'm on the Kubernetes Slack. I'm on the Women Who Go Slack, the CNCF Slack. I'm on too many Slacks, is I guess what I'm trying to say. But you can always find me if you look up my name. I use the same name everywhere. I'm always happy to answer questions.
Great. So can anybody reach out to you on LinkedIn? Like, are you active on LinkedIn as well?
Oh, definitely don't try to talk to me on LinkedIn. I will not see it until like 6 months later when I update like my profile.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we can assume that you're more active on Slack and Twitter, correct?
Yeah, you'll definitely get an answer within a day or two as opposed to months if you find me on Slack or Twitter. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. So we have this event which is called as Connect Forward 2021 on November 18th and 19th. So we would request everybody who's interested to register, and you can register yourself. And we also have a 50% off with Women Who Code Women. So you can enter the code, which is WWCode Cloud. And if I missed out anything to mention, Jackie, you can move forward with this event. I mean, about the event.
No, I think you covered it.
Okay. So thank you everybody for joining us today. And this is the last one from us. And if there are any questions more that you have, then you can put them in chat.
Yeah, thank you everyone for coming.
We're just hoping that it was a good one today and it was informative, and let us explore more about open source and about contributing and maintaining open source projects, because we got more information today from Carolyn, and thank you for sharing your knowledge and expertise and your initial stories and everything, Carolyn. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Yes.
Yeah, and thank you, Maitreyi, for moderating. All right. Bye, everyone. Enjoy your
Thank
Sunday.
you. Have a good rest of your day, everybody, and stay safe. Looking forward for everybody's presence in coming events. So let's keep going positive. Thank you, everybody.